What's going on, guys? It's Fight Season MMA, and today I want to predict the 5 future main events from UFC 310 to 314, talk about what these events are going to happen. As we all know, so far we have Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic at UFC 309, Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway at UFC 308, and the UFC 307 headlining by Alex Pereira versus Khalil Roundtree Jr. at Salt Lake City, Utah this coming Saturday. But we haven't heard any type of fight news coming up for these fights from UFC 310 in December, 311 in January, 312 in February, and onward forward. But truly, these fights are going to be some massive things. I have some great ideas on what the UFC could do and of how the UFC could stay really active with some of their amazing champions inside the organization. If you guys enjoy the UFC content, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And while you're down there, please turn on the post notifications, because that will always allow you guys to stay updated with the most recent UFC content that is posted daily on this channel. But without further ado, let's go predict the 5 future main events after UFC 309, that being 310 through 314, and seeing who is going to main event those. Okay, so far we have UFC 309 being the latest event, but what do we think is going to happen at UFC 310? Because I know that there's a lot of upcoming fights that could possibly lead into it, and I do think the main event at UFC 310 is going to be Belal Muhammad versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. I think that is going to be an amazing fight, and I truly do think that will be a fight that is going to be a great fight bringing back to the welterweight division. I know Shavkat Rakhmonov is one of the nastiest welterweights out there. He's 18-0, zero losses. He's got 18 finishes. He's an absolute wrecking ball out there, and truly Shavkat Rakhmonov is a mammoth of a human being, considering that he has all these skills to truly be a UFC champion. But Belal Muhammad himself is not a sludge. He just went out there and beat Leon Edwards in the UK, where Leon Edwards has never lost in the UK. But Belal Muhammad showed Leon Edwards that there is levels to this game, and he truly went out there and embarrassed Leon, and that was something that was incredible to see. I truly do think that this would be an amazing fight to be put on between these two individuals, considering that we have Belal Muhammad, who is kind of an upcoming fighter at this time, and he's still trying to prove himself in the UFC, being able to defend against anyone he wants. And I think Shavkat Rakhmonov would be a perfect first title defense at UFC 310. I still think this would be a great fight, and I do see Shavkat Rakhmonov winning that. At UFC 311, I'll link the video that I kind of talked about here, but I do think that it's going to be Islam Makhachev versus Armen Tsarukyan. I'm not going to touch that much on this video because I did a video on it yesterday, and if you want to go see that, like I said, I'll link it right here. But Islam Makhachev is such a great fighter, and his first fight with Armen Tsarukyan was actually one of the hardest tests that he had so far inside the organization. So I do think that running it back with Tsarukyan would be an incredible fight, considering that Armen has great grappling defense. He's a great fighter in total, but Islam Makhachev is one of the best well-rounded fighters inside the organization. He's an amazing striker, an amazing grappler, and truly has every single skill needed inside the organization to become an amazing fighter. And that is why I think that this rematch is so interesting. This will probably go down at UFC 311, considering that Khabib Nurmagomedov has said that Islam Makhachev is most likely to return pretty soon inside the organization. If you want to check out my full video yesterday, I'll link it somewhere in here. But yes, I do think that Islam Makhachev versus Armen Tsarukyan 2 will be headlining UFC 311. UFC 312, what do I think this fight is going to be? And I truly think that this is going to be Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland 2, and this is going to be an amazing fight when it goes down. I've also kind of announced this fight happening, considering that there is a lot of different individuals talking about this fight just needing a date to be scheduled, and it's been signed completely throughout. I do think that Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis is one of the best fights you can put on right inside in the UFC right now. I think these two are really good matches for each other, considering that Sean Strickland is a very well-rounded individual with a striking stand-up game, and Dricus du Plessis is a very good, well-rounded individual who has probably the best IQ inside the organization currently. Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland's first fight was incredibly close. A lot of different people had it going different ways. I know Dana White thought that Sean Strickland won that fight. I know a lot of the fan support thought that Sean Strickland to the fight, but ultimately Dricus du Plessis got the decision. I thought that was correct in the moment, but I do think that this deserves a rematch, considering that this is such an amazing fight. I think UFC 312 early next year in February would be an amazing time to put it on, considering that these two are kind of boiling for another fight again, and Dricus du Plessis wants to take a little bit of time off. He wants to have a time for a training camp to where he can go in there and kind of, he can have himself ready and prepare for this fight properly. And Sean Strickland, I know, is so eager to get back inside that octagon, and I think with this would be better to happen early than later, and I do think that UFC 312 would be a great time to do it. UFC 313, what could be the main event there? There's some really good fighters who could possibly main event there, but I do think that the main event is going to be Alex Pereira, because I do think he's going to come out and beat Khalil Roundtree Jr. this week, and he's going to fight Magomed Ankalaev, and I do think that Magomed Ankalaev is going to go in there and beat someone like Alexander Rakic at UFC Abu Dhabi. I think that this fight is going to be very well in the making. We got Alex Pereira going up against his first true grappler inside the UFC. I know Jan Blachowicz was kind of a grappler, but he isn't as good as Alex as Magomed Ankalaev is in that standpoint. Ankalaev is a Dagestani wrestler. He kind of trains in Vegas too, but I do think that he's going to be able to go in there and take down someone like Pereira over and over and over again to make this possibly a hard fight. But the biggest thing for Ankalaev is that if he's going to be able to take him down over and over again, he's going to have to be staying awake to do so. And I think Alex Pereira's nuclear power is going to be able to stop that. I do think that Pereira versus Ankalaev is a fight that all the fans want to see, considering that this would be absolutely necessary prior to moving up to heavyweight, because there's no way that Pereira could beat someone like Tom Aspinall and John Jones if he couldn't beat a wrestler like Ankalaev. So I do think that this is a prior step on going up to heavyweight, and I do think this would be an amazing fight to be had, considering that Magomed Ankalaev is calling for the title shot of how he's saying Alex Pereira should win this fight against Roundtree, which I do think he will. And I do think that this is going to be the perfect time to put these two individuals together at UFC 313. At UFC 314, I do see someone like Ilia Topuria or Max Holloway defending their belt. And I'm going to just say, for this sake, I'm going to say it's the rematch Ilia Topuria versus Alexander Volkanovski 2. I am kind of leaning to Topuria at UFC 308, but that is such a close fight between him and Holloway. And truly, there are so many different ways that could go. So I do think that Ilia Topuria returning at UFC 314 to defend against Alexander Volkanovski would be an amazing fight to be had. I know Volk is talking so much that he wants to get this rematch with Ilia, and I do think that Volk could win this fight, but he's just got to watch that chin that he has. Volk's chin has never been that good, and that is something that really hampered him in that last fight with Topuria. Topuria has amazing accuracy and precision, and that is something that can truly allow him to land right on the tip of your chin, knocking you out cold. And I think that Volkanovski, if he would ever get into a fight with someone like that, it would be such a hard thing to do, considering that he is one of the best, strikers. He throws out a lot of punches, he throws out a lot of volume, but his chin not being the greatest would really just kind of say his skills aren't even there. I think Topuria has a great style to beat Volkanovski, and I do think that he would go in there and beat Volk, but I do think that Alexander Volkanovski cannot be underestimated, even considering his age, because he is one of the greatest fighters the UFC has ever seen. He's probably the greatest UFC featherweight. It's either him or Aldo, or probably Holloway, one of the three, but truly, I do think that at UFC 314, it would be Ilia Topuria defending against Alexander Volkanovski, and that would probably be the best fight that you could make for that event. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fight Season MMA, and please let me know what you think down below in the comment section about these fights coming up from UFC 310 to 314. I do think that there is so much customization that the UFC could do for these events, but you definitely want to get your big stars in there. I think the welterweight title being defended at UFC 310 would be a great start. I think that is going to be an incredible fight between Belal Muhammad and Shavkat Rakhmonov. I think 311 having Islam Makhachev, one of the greatest UFC fighters currently in the organization, come back and fight someone as good as Armen Tsarukyan is a not miss banger. Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland 2 at UFC 312 would be an absolutely dream for a lot of UFC fans. I know the Dricus du Plessis fans are absolutely insane out there, and everyone loves Sean Strickland from America, so that would be a great fight to occur again. I do think that at UFC 313 with Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev would be a very exciting fight. I do think that Alex Pereira needs to prove himself prior to going up to heavyweight and possibly challenging someone like John Jones or Tom Aspinall for him being the first ever Triple Crown champion. And lastly, at UFC 314, I do think a fight between Ilia Topuria and Alexander Volkanovski 2 would be an amazing fight coming up, and that's assuming that Ilia beats Max, or I could see possibly them doing Max Holloway versus Volkanovski 4 to kind of put that fight back into the mix, considering that is one of the greatest rivalries in UFC history. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fight Season MMA, and if you guys enjoyed the content, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. That is the best way to help the channel grow, and while you're down there, please turn on the post notifications, just so you guys are always notified when UFC content releases. But without further ado, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon with more UFC content and news.